There's a rush to be first rather than to be correct. All the things that can take you out. The most likely thing to kill you is yourself. Most activists of most causes, they're not usually people who have their lives in order.
Where a lot of people go wrong, they assume that they have to have some form of battle or some form of hardship in their life that they have to go and stand up for.
I think that true self-love means true self-responsibility and accountability and wanting to be the best version of yourself. I think the probability that you were born in the town, city, or even country that is absolutely the best for you is pretty low. You do have 10, 20 times the testosterone level as the average woman does. Let's take that energy and that power and that aggression and drive and let's put it into something constructive. To build a strong, healthy, fit physique, if you can do that, it requires the exact same personality traits and habits that are required to achieve success. One of my core online principles and real world principles is play the ball, not the man.
And we are back in Dubai, and this episode, guys, is going to be an absolute banger. I have got another returning guest to the show. This man, in the last 12 months, I've seen him interview Elon Musk. I've seen him absolutely send it to a whole new level on all forms of social as well, and TV appearances, speaking gigs across the world. The man is Zuby. Welcome to the podcast, my man.
How's it going, Frankie? Good to see you.
It's, mate, I'm hyped to have you back. I'm hyped to have you here. I'll tell you exactly the place where I want to start with you today, because I was reading through your Twitter before we came into this room today, and the one tweet I want to start on, because I think this is such a powerful thing for people, for you to contextualize for this audience, is this. You wrote, work on yourself, be of massive value to your community, put your family in the strongest possible position to weather any storm and enjoy the process. That was in reply to a question that someone had asked you this morning. Mm-hmm. I just want you to expand on that, because obviously there's a lot of wisdom in that. I know it's like the father of Twitter is telling the world something, and I think we should all stand up and listen. Expand that for me.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, that was actually, as you said, a response to a single individual who asked me a direct question. So to give further context, I said something along the lines of being angry, outraged, and offended all the time doesn't make you a better person. It was just a flippant tweet that I threw out there because it's something I believe, and it's relevant to a lot of things that I constantly observe, both in the real world and on social media, which is this thing that being angry and offended, number one, means that you're correct, but number two, it means that you're righteous, and perhaps you're even a more virtuous and better person because you care so much that you're constantly angry. The truth is, in this world, and I believe this has been true for all of human existence, there are infinite things for you to be angry and offended about, especially if you expand your scope to the entire world. There is always multiple conflicts going on, multiple wars, people dying unjustly every day, crimes taking place, people getting sick, children dying there. If you want to, just open any newspaper in any country and go through it, you'll find plenty of things that it's reasonable to be angry about. However, if you're just angry all the time and you're offended all the time, or you're that person who every time someone says something or everything you read, you try to find out how it makes you mad and how you can justify that anger, then it's just not productive. Number one, it doesn't mean that you're a morally superior person, but number two is it doesn't do anything. If I just spent all my time on every podcast I do and every public speaking gig I do and my music and my tweets and my Instagram just complaining about the world and actually feeding into trying to make people fearful and trying to make people angry. I mean, that is a whole social media strategy.
Yeah, 100%.
It beyond social media. Why do people even criticize the traditional media so much? It's like they're just creating division and ginning people up and getting people angry and hostile and polarized and so on. And there can be a time and a place for this. I'm not saying you go to the complete opposite end and you're completely apathetic about everything in the world and you don't care and you're emotionless. That's not the answer either. But I often just think of what is helpful, what can be helpful. Right? We can all get caught up in the hype, but you have to come back to think, okay, what is helpful and what am I actually doing to move my life or those of other people's in a better direction? If I'm just out there telling people that the sky is falling and the world is going to end and I'm just trying to black pill everyone, it might be good for my view count and I might be able to build influence doing that, but ultimately I'm building the wrong type of followership and I'm not really contributing anything useful. It might feel to me like, hey, I'm being moral and virtuous or whatever, but who am I really helping? if I'm just striking fear into people and I'm telling them that the world is out to get them and everything is wrong and I'm just highlighting all these awful things, it doesn't actually help people. The sad thing about the world is we have extraordinarily limited control. Most people can't even control themselves, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Most people have very poor control of their own habits, proclivities, addictions, sins, tendencies. People struggle to control their own mind. They struggle to control their own body. You can see this. What's the weight of people being overweight and obese? The majority of the population in many countries. People can't even control what they're eating and their exercise habits, but they somehow think that they can control the entire world and everybody in it and every foreign government and their own local government. You want to participate, you want to be civically engaged, but there's an extent. And I think that especially if it's not someone's job, I find that when people get completely obsessed with, say, politics, number one, it creates another form of victim mentality where you're now just the victim of everything that's coming down the pipeline. But also it externalizes your locus of control, right? And it's also just a distraction, because the truth is, as much as we would all like to, like I said, we just don't have control over all those things. What we do have control of is ourselves within reason, and that actually takes a lot of work. It can take decades of work to master yourself, and maybe no one ever fully gets there. And then those around us, our friends, people we know. We can influence our friends. If you're a parent, you can influence your children, your brothers, your sisters, your parents, your community, the people around you in your local area. You can influence that. You still don't have control over it because you can't control another person unless you want to be a tyrant. But that's the best that we can do. But I think the truth is, and Jordan Peterson has made this point years ago, and I think it's one of the best points he's ever made, which is that to truly change the world, that comes from everybody doing that, right? If every single individual did their best, no one's perfect. If each person did their best it's going to sound crazy to some people because people want these top-down solutions all the time, but if each individual did their best to improve themselves mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, career-wise, their meaning, their purpose, their community, if everyone tried to do all that and everyone tried to love their neighbors as themselves and treat people with decency and be kind to one another and be civil, even in the face of disagreement or differences, if everybody did that, if everyone just internalized that and said, you know what, let me stop screaming on the internet and let me stop, fighting and just obsessing over all of these political cycles or whatever it is, let me focus inwardly on myself and my family. If everyone were to do that, that's actually how you would truly make the world a better place. Because number one, you snuff out all of that negative energy. We only have so much energy. We only have so much time. We only have so much attention.
And you got to pick what you put it in.
Yeah, you got to pick. It's not, there are trade-offs. There are trade-offs. If I'm spending 4 hours a day, this is why I find, kind of people who come at me and you and anyone who's, if you have any type of following on the internet, or perhaps even if you don't, you're going to get people who are hating, who are trolling, who are just there every day. And you can go through their feed and their entire feed is just attacking people, right? They're spending, let's say, 4 hours per day on YouTube, on Instagram, on X, on whatever it is, just attacking other people, leaving nasty comments, whatever. That's 4 hours that they're not doing something useful, productive, and helpful for themselves, for other people. You're just trying to tear down, spread negativity. And of course, these people are not happy, because how can you be, right? I can imagine, I mean, how much time over the past decade have you spent to trying to, leaving nasty YouTube comments and trolling people on Twitter and attacking people that you don't even know? I'd assume it's under 5 minutes.
I'd assume if I look back that I have left nasty comments when I was younger, probably 10 years ago. I probably was in that boat. Mm-hmm. When I was in that UK mindset at the time of like picking a battle and going and fighting it.
Sure.
Because I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. They assume that they have to have some form of battle or some form of hardship in their life that they have to go and stand up for, that they need to get behind, whether it be Black Lives Matter, whether it be Palestine, whether it be Israel, whether it be some other form of divide and rule conquership on the internet. What I've seen from you, which is what I love and resonate from, is obviously you're a thought leader in the space of I'd say politically, freedom of speech, all these elements to your speech that I think where you articulate your ideas and they're great. What I've seen from you though is that you don't do it in a way to make someone feel a certain way so that you can sell them something, which a lot of other thought leaders in your space kind of, they take you down one narrative and then they sell you a solution. So how have you stayed true to yourself in that respect? Because it's very interesting that other people with your following, with your engagement on Twitter, are funneling.
Yes.
And you're not funneling. So what kind of made you differentiate that path?
Yeah, and by the way, a lot of people get angry and upset with me for not doing that, because people want you to take a side on everything, even if you're not knowledgeable about the subject, even if it's totally outside of the things you normally talk about. One big strange thing about growing a big following, and I've learned this over the years, is you have people who are truly supporters and they like what you're doing and they respect you and they kind of just understand how it is. But you have other people who want to use you as a megaphone. So they want you to be their mouthpiece. They don't really care about your true opinions or what you care about or what you wish to speak about or not. They just want you to use your platform to say the things that they want to say. So maybe they have 300 followers and they say, hey, you've got 300,000. You should be talking about this. You need to say this. You need to stand up for this. You need to condemn this. You need to condone this. And then they'll always, I'm so disappointed in you that you're not talking about this. Or if you do talk about it, I'm disappointed that you didn't say the exact words I wanted you to say or whatever. People like that don't truly respect you. People like this don't respect you because they're totally happy. And this cuts across all sides. This is not unique to your one side of the aisle or whatever it is. It just happens issue to issue, and there are people who they don't really care about who you are and what you're doing and the message you're trying to put out there. They just seek to have that control over you and use you as their microphone. And I personally refuse to do that. If there's something that I say or I post about or I say, it's because I chose to. It's because I chose to, and I have thought about it, and I feel like I have something, again, helpful to contribute. There are situations where I don't have anything helpful to say. I don't have anything helpful to add to all these conversations are already going on with millions, billions of people, and I don't have anything useful I can say. If I say something, then it might just be misconstrued, or it might even raise the temperature. It might make people more angry when they're caught up in their emotions. It might make people more hostile. And there are situations where, yeah, I've got something valuable to say, and I think it's going to be helpful. Sure, it might upset some people, but I've thought this through, and here's my informed statement. There are more things in this world that I don't know about than there are things I know about. And I think because I have perhaps wisdom or expertise in certain areas, sometimes people think that you then have it in everything. There are subjects I know very little about. Someone asks me my opinion, and I'm like, honestly, I don't know. And I'm not afraid to say I don't know. So maybe that answers your question. I'm not afraid to say I don't know. And I'm not afraid to say I was wrong. If I do say something and it turns out, okay, I got the facts totally wrong or whatever, I'm happy to say, yeah, I made a mistake on that. And I think that very few people, in fact, I think the bigger someone's following and the more influence they have, the less of an incentive there is to ever do that. This is why you never hear politicians or big media figures, you never hear them say, I don't know. You never hear them say that I was wrong or we made a mistake. They never say it. I wish they would. I wish they'd be humble and just say, you know what? Yeah, we got that wrong. I received new information and I've changed my mind, or I said this thing and it was incorrect. But they don't do that. And then I think as a result, it's not so surprising that if these are supposed to be leaders, whether they're political leaders or media leaders or thought leaders or social media influencers, whatever it may be, if these are supposed to be the leaders and that's what they're exemplifying and demonstrating, it doesn't surprise me that the general population becomes less willing to do that, less willing to say, I don't know, less willing to reserve judgment. I think another big problem, and this is incentivized both on traditional media and social media, is there's a rush to be first rather than to be correct. So something happens.
That is powerful.
Right? There's a rush to be first. People want to be first. It's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's be honest, we've seen it massively in the last.
It's called trend riding. They encourage creators on these platforms to trend ride.
Yes.
And what you're saying is No. Before you ride the trend, check the information is correct. Like, for argument's sake, you could have tweeted, if we went back to this war thing, you could have tweeted that Israel had beheaded X amount of babies, or Palestine had beheaded X amount of babies, right? But the information was incorrect. But so many political leaders in that particular time took the narrative and trendjacked and hijacked it and went with it.
Yeah.
But it was incorrect information. I think that's what you're kind of getting at.
Yeah, exactly, because they want to be first. And there's a pressure to be as well. So I understand it, because sometimes something will happen. And honestly, within hours, I've got DMs saying, Zuby, what's your take on this? How come you haven't spoken on this? Dude, I've had ones where people are upset with me and I don't even know the incident that has occurred that they want me to speak on, especially with time zone differences, right? Something might happen somewhere and I'm literally asleep when it happens. And then I'm up in the morning and I've got, not loads, but I've got a few messages saying, what's your take on this? Or how come you're silent on this issue? And I'm like, I don't even know the issue they're referring to. And then I have to go and look on the news and say, oh, this thing happened overnight while I was sleeping. And now, but I'm supposed to come out. I've just woken up and I'm meant to give a hot take, which is going to potentially reach millions of people and influence them. And I will not do that unless I know what's happened and I've done my best to really get the information. And also I choose to speak on it because I think I can say something helpful. I won't be pressured into doing that. And most people a lot of people are under a lot of pressure, especially if you're someone who usually speaks out on certain things. It can become a trap.
Yeah.
Because there's also the thing of, oh, how come you spoke on this, but you didn't speak on that?
Yeah.
Right? How come you talked about this issue, but you didn't talk about this issue? So once you start that thing of, okay, I'm the person who speaks out against injustice, you actually kind of set yourself up for failure in certain ways, because everything that happens on the day it happens, you're meant to have a take.
You're meant to have this analogy for, and the following will always try and load the bullets for you to fire, and they don't care where they land. They just want to load the bullet and you to fire that bullet.
Yeah.
But it's like it's important that you have the true context and the true nature of what you're going to say before you say it. So why is it that you believe that humans, as a kind of byproduct of being a human these days, you will go out and worry about what's happening on someone else's grass and someone else's land in someone else's world, more so than you worry about your own shit that you have to sort out in your own world? Why is that so prevalent in this day and age, especially between the age group, I'd say, of 18 to 40?
Yeah.
We're in this social media age now where people will happily talk about a war.
Yes.
But what about their own war that's going on in their own living room, where they're not going to the gym, they're not eating the right food, they're not even putting the right things in their body to even give themselves the ability to critically think?
Yes.
What about that?
I think it's an outsourcing of responsibility and accountability. And I don't think that people necessarily do this intentionally or consciously. It's a bit like the way people procrastinate, right? You could have some important work to do. We all do this. No one is immune to procrastination. You could have some really important work to do, and then you spend your time doing not just leisure stuff, things that feel like busy work, but they're not the busy work that you really need to do. You check your emails, you respond to DMs, you mess around with your website, you tweak some things here and there. And what you're really doing is it's avoidance, right? You're avoiding doing what really needs to be done. And you're doing it in a way that feels morally and ethically okay, right? So if my life were a mess, if I didn't have my body in order, I didn't have my finances in order, I wasn't right with God, I had issues going on in my family or my relationships or whatever it is, and I want to procrastinate on that, a great way for me to procrastinate is to obsess over things that are happening in politics, whether domestically or overseas, and to be talking about the left and the right and the Democrats and the Republicans and labor and conservatives and this conflict and that and that and that, and putting the flags up and doing the slacktivism, the hashtag activism, and just doing all of that. And to the outside world, I'm getting props from that. I'm getting likes. I'm getting people saying, thank you for standing up. I respect you so much, whatever. So I'm actually earning some social clout. Meanwhile, in the background, my own life could be a mess. Yeah, my own life is in a mess. And instead of just dealing with that and saying, okay, I'm going to at least temporarily shut that out, and I'm going to just focus on the things, again, that I can control, I think this is why, and I don't want to speak too broadly, but most activists of most causes are not, like people who are really consider themselves activists, they're not usually people who have their lives in order. They're really not. I've observed this. When you see these big marches and protests going on, it's not typically people who really have their stuff sorted out. It doesn't normally be that. It's not normally, okay, these are all these successful people are out there and they've got the placards and they're marching and they're chanting and they're doing this and that. Because people are busy. People are busy. And I'm very much a fan of people standing up for what they believe in. So I don't want people to misconstrue this. I just think that people need to be careful with the battles that they choose. And they need to be careful of how to fight those battles to make sure that, to minimize the chance that they're causing more damage than they're helping. Because you can even have a good cause and you can go about it in a very bad way.
So how do you feel, though, that someone who's listening to this can actually go about auditing all the battles that they think they're fighting in their life and make sure that they're in full alignment with their own personal growth?
Mm-hmm. I think you'd start with yourself. I think it's a good idea for any man or woman out there to honestly maybe spend some time and just, if you're someone who watches a lot of TV and is always scrolling social media and keeping up to date with everything going on around the world all the time and so on, I would honestly recommend practically shut that off for a while. You'll feel like you're missing out. You'll realize quickly that you're not, right? Shut it out for a couple of weeks, shut it out for a month, and work on yourself, genuinely. Sort out your diet. Most people eat like garbage. Sort out your diet, clean it up, exercise regularly, go for walks every day, hit your 10,000 steps a day, make sure you're drinking enough water, make sure you're getting enough sleep, like work on the things around you. Call up don't be trolling me or hating on me or anyone else on social media when you haven't spoken to your own parents, you haven't spoken to your own siblings in the past week. You're not right with your own friends. You're having beef with your girlfriend, your wife, your husband, like, what are you doing yelling at me for? Like, wow, what do you do? Honestly, like,
you haven't got time.
No, you don't have time. Like, get your priorities in order. You're yelling at me. Meanwhile, like, your mom is not even spoken to your own mother who birthed you and raised you. I'm like, call your mom. Make sure she's okay. It sounds trite. And I'm not even trying to be condescending. And we can all fall into this where we get obsessed with all these things and we're like, wait, actually, I haven't taken care of the things that I need to. And naturally, when you do those things, you start to feel better about yourself. You start to feel more truly confident. You start to have a more optimistic look on life. Because the truth is, whether you're optimistic or you're pessimistic, or you're white-pilled or you're black-pilled, whatever term someone wants to use, in a way, you're right. If I were to say that human beings are the most amazing thing in the world, and we have overcome so much through history, and there's so much love and kindness and generosity and compassion and friendship and generosity in this world and charity, and people are heroic and they do amazing things, all of that is true. If I were to say that human beings are the worst thing in the world and we murder and we kill and we genocide and every day there's crimes against humanity and there's war for thousands of years and there's conflict and we're damaging the environment and we're taking out other species and destroying their habitats and polluting the river, I'm also correct. Both of those things are true. But which one is going to be your dominant worldview? And this is where I don't like to split humanity in binary ways because it's certainly a spectrum on this front, but this is where you have people who I just generally describe as being pro-human, and you have people who are anti-human, right? They view human beings as this cancer and this plague on the world because they're so focused on all the negative, all the bad things that we do and we're capable of doing. And I can understand how people get to that point, because if you really spend a lot of time just focusing on the negative and you're really conscious of all the bad things humans do, and you're aware of your own nature and the fact that you yourself have the potential to do awful things as well, and maybe you've done some awful things in the past and you spend all the time in that zone, it can really lead you to nihilism. It can lead you to a very self-destructive worldview where, man, this leads me to a point I wasn't even going to make. Because think about this, Frankie. I mean, we're both from the UK. What is the most common way for a man under the age of 40 in the UK to die?
Depression, like suicide.
Think about that. the most common way for a young man to die, of all the things that can take you out, the most likely thing to kill you is yourself. When you really think of it, like, that's crazy.
Deep.
That's deep. That's dark. It's not other people. It's not illness. It's not war. It's not a random crime. It's you. You are your own greatest enemy. I think that it's crazy. This is not even a bigger conversation when you really think of it, like, wait, young men are dying by their own hand to a crazy number. I don't even know what the total number is if you were to combine it across different countries, but go ahead.
I think men are taught that they need to have a battle with something. I remember going in the boxing gym when I was younger, and there'd be a lot of lads that would be boxing in that gym, and they wouldn't just be in that ring to perform to get to a level in boxing. They'd be in that ring to escape the dad that's beating them, the council estate life that they're coming from, some form of hardship in their school life or education. So it's like boxing to them was, and the best boxers, some of the best boxers I've seen that haven't made it but were also the most talented, were the ones that were expressing with their hands and their feet something in the physical reality that they couldn't express in their own internal reality at home or at school or through their family life.
Yeah.
And those are the lads that I've gone on to see struggle the most, is the ones that they've got all this talent, but they don't have any belief in their own talent. And I think we're always, as humans, trying to escape something, and it's very ideal to find out as soon as possible in your life what it is you're trying to escape and to face it, because the sooner you can face what you're actually trying to escape, the sooner you can get away and take yourself away from this curve that we're leaning on, where, you know, the biggest killer of men is suicide now.
Yeah.
And that's because you're trying to escape something which you haven't yet faced. And I think, is there any advice that you can give people in order to get to the point where that they can face this in a faster way?
It's a great question. I have a theory, I've said it a few times, where I believe that men are always building or destroying. I don't think that as a boy or a man, I don't think boys and men really have a neutral. When I look at history, this seems true. When I just observe little boys running around doing things, when I see teenage boys, when I see young men, older men, we're always building or destroying. So, and that can be outwardly or inwardly. If you go to the extreme, you see manifestations of both of these, right? We've talked about the most severe form of inward destruction, which is where someone decides to take their own life. But even before that, there are many destructive things people do: substance abuse, falling into alcoholism, self-harm, those type of things. But it can also be outward, right? When you have these people who go out and they commit mass murders, they go out and they shoot places up, or they go out and they just start assaulting and attacking other people, right? Or even in a less physically violent way, these people who are just there constantly on just trying to just tear down other people. They're trying to, instead of building their own thing, they're trying to destroy what you built. They're trying to destroy what I've built. They're trying to destroy my confidence. They're trying to attack other people, tear those people down instead of building themselves up. If you see little boys, I mean, go to a nursery, go to a kindergarten, they're either building with blocks and they're piling stuff up, sandcastle, or they're fighting each other, or they're knocking things down. This boy built a big tower with blocks, and then some kid comes down and knocks down his tower instead of building his own tower. And I think that's a metaphor for how we generally behave. Women can do it too, but I think for men, maybe because of our competitive nature, our testosterone, whatever it is, we're much more likely to do that. So I think for every man, it's important to recognize we have this energy, we have these masculine urges. We do have a desire for competition and conquest and fighting, however you want to put it, going to war. We have that within us. It's been with us for thousands of years.
You're never going to get rid of it. So it's important you understand how to channel it.
Exactly. So I think the wrong interpretation of this is the masculinity is bad narrative, right? Oh, men have aggression. They have the potential for violence. They can be destructive, whatever. They go to war. So there's one narrative which is like, okay, so we need to nerf men. We need to weaken them. We need to bring the testosterone out of them. We need to sort of turn them into women. Whereas I think the correct answer is, yes, men do have all of these things. We do have these proclivities. We do have high 10, 20 times the testosterone level as the average woman does. So let's take that energy and that power and that aggression and drive and let's put it into something constructive. And when men are really on their game, and I imagine like most men you admire, they're taking that masculine energy and competitiveness and all of that, and they're putting it into something constructive. It could be on an athletic field, it could be in business, it could be an entrepreneurial adventure, it could be literally building things, constructing, building roads, working with your hands, whatever it is. It could be building a family, building and raising a family and molding and forming children. All of that. That's, to me, a very positive embodiment of masculinity. So I think you don't want to nerf masculinity. You want to take that energy and you just want to put it in these constructive things. And I think one of the challenges of the modern era is that because we're so comfortable, I mean, it's wonderful that we're not being shipped off, to battle, or we're not being forced to, toil the soil for 12 hours a day to feed our families and so on. But that creates this new challenge where you still do have that strength and that want to fight, that battle. But since you're not really going to battle, you need to put it towards something that is healthy and constructive.
Well, you've got to, you essentially as a man in this world have to fill the void that we have. We, like you said, we have to fight as men. We have to fight for something. We have to pick a battle that we want to pursue. For me, it's been podcasting. I put all my energy into that and trying to be the best that I can be in that. If I didn't have that, I'd have to pick something else. Otherwise, I'd go to war with myself, exactly. Is what you're saying. So like me and you, we go to the gym, we pick our battle with fitness, we pick our battle with our the amount of steps we get every day, and we pick our battles with you, with your speaking and getting out into the world, and me with my podcasting, and you with your podcast as well. It's sensational. But if anyone wants the fastest route to that, the fastest route is from the moment you listen to this podcast, just for once in your life, just say to yourself, right, this is my goal now, and I'm going to pursue this one. I'm going to stick my flag in the ground, and I'm going to go towards that. And I don't care whether it's a fitness goal, whether it's a relationship goal, whether it's some form of improvement, but have a clear goal with a clear load of steps that may take 3, 4, 5 months to even see the first step of progress. Have that, because it's the pursuit of that will give you the purpose to align the rest of your whole life. And if you don't have that, you don't have anything.
And to be specific with people, I recommend for the vast majority of people, if they're not already doing it, I recommend to everybody start with the physical. Most people are out of shape. Most people get moving. I think literal motion is incredibly actual, like get moving, like actually move your body, right? Move your body. If you're wondering what thing do I start on, do I start with my money, do I start with game and relationships, do I start with reading more books, do I start with going to the gym? Start with, if you don't already exercise regularly and you don't eat a good nutritious diet, start with that. Number one, because it's way harder than you think it is. Right? People have this idea that, it's you. People, I'm sure you've had people, I would go to the gym, but I don't want to get too big. I'm like, bro, I've been trying to get too big for 20 years. Like, good luck to you trying to get too big. It's like not reading books because you don't want to get too smart. Like, it doesn't happen by accident. So I think that's the number one to start with, because it's hard. It gets you in motion. And I think that kinetic energy can be transmuted into other forms of energy. And it'll teach you to let's be honest, to build a strong, healthy, fit physique. If you can do that, it requires the exact same personality traits and habits that are required to achieve success in anything else. Consistency, discipline, perseverance, dealing with challenges, overcoming plateaus, going against the grain, doing something when you don't always want to, like feeling a physical burn and difficulty. It's hard. But if you can do it in the gym, right? Show me someone who can deadlift 500 pounds and has a weak mindset. Do they exist? Maybe someone can find an exception. But if someone has built up their level of strength to do that, it takes time, consistency, it takes years to get there. And so that is displayed throughout other elements of their life. This is why when as a man, right? If you see another guy who's if you're in good physical shape and you see another guy who's in good physical, there's an automatic there's an automatic level of respect, because it tells you something about him. It tells you, okay, I know that this guy has some level of discipline and will and consistency and character because he's built this physique. I know you cannot accomplish that without those things. So actually it gives you, it's like a positive bias. It's a positive bias. It says something about you. It doesn't say everything about your character. Of course not. But
yeah, it says you're dedicated at the things that matter most in the judgmental stage of humans.
Yes.
So when I first meet you, what am I going to notice? I'm going to notice that you're well dressed, you're well kept. You know, you jacked for your size. Do you know what I mean? Like you train hard, and there's an instant level of respect.
Yeah.
For that straight away, because you've got yourself to the point in life where you can be all of those things. And if most people got to that stage, that's a hell of a lot stage further than where they are right now.
Yeah. And it builds true confidence because it creates competence, right? So a lot of people talk about confidence, and oftentimes it's missed that the way you truly become confident is by becoming competent, right? There are things I'm very confident about because I've developed competency and experience, and I've done them so many times. I've done over 500 interviews. I feel very comfortable right now sitting here. It doesn't matter if a camera's rolling or not rolling. I feel very comfortable in this situation. I've spoken to hundreds of thousands of people in the real world through the course of my career, and I've done over 500 podcasts and interviews combined. So I'm very much in my comfort zone right now. If you said, okay, after this, let's go surfing. I've never surfed before. I am not going to be confident because I'm not competent.
Yeah.
Right? Someone who's been I've been surfing since I was 5 years old, and they're shredding. They feel super confident. But then you know what? You might throw them in a podcast studio and switch on a camera,
and they're well up.
And they're freaking because they haven't developed the competency. So I think when people talk about confidence, sometimes the advice is not particularly useful because they just say, "Oh, just be more confident. Just be confident," and they should say, "Develop competency. Become good at that particular thing and in that area." And as a result, over the course of time, you'll naturally become confident in that and in other areas. Because even when it comes to something like surfing, I've never surfed before, so I would not be a confident surfer. But I'm confident in my ability to learn new skills because I've learned many new skills over the course of my life.
So what makes this different? Yeah, you just approach it in the same way.
Exactly. I know, okay, the same way I got myself in good physical shape. I used to be fat. I used to weigh more. I'm 37. I weighed more at 16 than I weigh now. It wasn't muscle. All right?
Mental.
And so I weigh less 21 years later.
That's down to your mom's cooking that show.
It's maybe a factor. But this is the thing, because people look at me now that, oh, you've got amazing genetics, or, oh, you've always been in shape, or it's easy for you to say, or whatever. I'm like, dude, you don't realize you didn't see what I looked like 20-something years ago. You don't realize, like, I've been consistently training for a long period of time and minding what I eat and so on.
What essentially you're saying to people is, right, you frame it right now from the beginning. You say, okay, this is my new goal. I don't have the competence in this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it 90 to 180 days, because that's normally the time frame that you need to get a kind of competence in the skill like surfing or like the gym, where you can actually see truly measured improvement. I'm going to give myself that time and just dedicate myself to the reps that need to be done over that period of time. Okay, well, how many times a week do I need to surf? Okay, I need to surf 3 times a week for 12 weeks, and then I need to reassess, and then I might need to up it to 5 times a week for the next 12 weeks because I'm now standing up. I now need to carve waves. I now need to do this. It's like people don't look at it like that. People go, I'll try it once. I wasn't as good as I thought I was going to be, because humans have an innate ability of thinking that they're better at something that they've never done before than something that they've repeated 16 times, which baffles me. But I think we can all get this overconfidence in how we'll be straight away.
Yeah, I think people forget that every single thing that they know and that they can do, they had to learn at some point. There was a time when we couldn't walk. There was a time when we didn't know how to speak. There was a time when we didn't know how to understand other people's speech. We both used to be illiterate, right? We didn't know how to read. Everything besides, like, breathing, eating, pooping, and screaming, you have to learn. Like, look at a baby. Babies don't know how to do they don't know how to do anything besides those very basic survival things. That's all they know how to do. And then you see a toddler start to learn to crawl and then learn to walk. What happens is they're walking, they keep falling over. They're doing it wrong. Some kids they're walking, crawling backwards. They're doing it all wrong. And then they learn to understand speech. There's that stage where little kids, they can understand what you're saying, but they don't know how to articulate back. So they can understand basic statements and commands, but they don't know how to speak. And then over time, they start attempting, and they're horrible at it. They're getting everything wrong. They don't know the grammar. They don't have vocabulary. And then very rapidly over the course of the next few years, I mean, between the age of, let's say, 2 and 5, they go from not knowing
to proficient.
To being very proficient in the language. They don't have the biggest vocabulary, but they're fluent in the native language. It's crazy. Actually, it's humbling, because if you try to, like, I do language learning every day. So in the past, I've built myself up to a certain level of proficiency with French and Spanish. I've built my French. I've mostly lost because I haven't used it for many years. Like, I can still have basic conversations, but Spanish, I work on my Spanish every day. And it's humbling because I was in Colombia, for example, last month, or I was in Mexico a few months ago, and there's 5-year-olds who are speaking Spanish fluently. And there's something very humbling about it. You're there trying to learn a new language, and you're seeing how difficult it is. And then you're just seeing these small children, and they're better than you at this language, right? We're in UAE, and you're seeing children, of course, you're speaking and understanding Arabic, and you're like, man, Arabic is tough to learn. And there's something very humbling about it, but it reminds you that every single thing that we know, I think as an adult, you forget it. You forget that you had to learn all of these things that you do about walking. You don't even think, you walk so easily, you don't think about it. If you have a friend who, you drive, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If you take an adult, the same much, there's some adults, they don't learn how to drive until their 30s or 40s or whatever. And they get in the car, and it reminds you, oh my gosh, I used to not even know. Once you've been driving for a while, you just do it. You don't, it's so hardwired in you.
You've ingrained it.
Yes, you've ingrained it, and you forget, oh my gosh, like, it is hard to learn this. It is hard to learn this, but I did it. So I think when people have that sort of humility and they just remember that there's a process to all these things, and you have the patience, and you just remember, okay, I accept with anything new, I totally accept, I'm going to suck at this for a while. I'm probably going to suck at this for a while. And once you accept that, you don't get discouraged. You don't just do the first surfing session and you decide to give up because you're not good. It's like, well, who's going to be amazing at surfing the first time they try it?
There's a powerful saying in jiu-jitsu, and it's called always be a white belt.
Okay.
And what they're trying to say is, like, even when you're blue or purple belt, just always be a white belt to learning more. Even when you're this black belt, the first day you get your black belt in jiu-jitsu, you're back on the floor of learning again, because there's other black belts that have had them for 10 minutes. So essentially, like, even in podcasting, and you've interviewed people like Elon Musk and Alex Hormozy and other people like that, you've achieved phenomenal things, but there's not an episode that goes by where you're not learning something about lighting, about camera angles, about, oh, I said this, I paused too long here, I didn't pause long enough here. But you're in a stage now where you've done it so many times that you're doing the 1% iterations. But there was a time when all those 1% iterations were 10% iterations. And I think that's what we don't give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
The one thing I've seen you dramatically do, which is similar to my journey self, you've traveled the world for the last, I'd say, 10 plus years, probably longer. And you've had a massive success in America. You've lived in Saudi Arabia, I believe. You've lived in the UK. You've bounced around the UAE. You've been to Australia, because with last podcast we did there.
Yeah, that's great.
So you've seen a wide variety of the world. But you've come to the decision now, after becoming a multimillionaire whilst traveling, that you have decided to reside now in the UAE and take a residency here, I believe.
Yeah.
What is your reasoning behind that, and what kind of things do you see here that you don't see in other parts of the world that you wanted to dive into?
Wow. Okay, this is a big answer, and it'll make some people happy, and it'll probably upset some people as well.
I like that.
But I've been dealing with this my whole life. I grew up in Saudi Arabia, so I've always had unorthodox takes on some of these things. Firstly, when it comes to deciding a place to live, my general philosophy, and there are many people who disagree with me on this, but I am a believer in go where you're treated best and go where is best for you and your family or future family. Some people have this idea that on a local or national level, that you must live and stay and forever be in the hometown or the home country that you were born in or grew up in. I don't subscribe to that at all. There are people who think that that is the meaning of patriotism, or that if you leave, you're running away, or you're somehow being a coward, or you're being a traitor, or whatever it is. This is a belief system that exists all around the world, and it cuts in all different directions. I think that's complete nonsense. I think the probability that you were born in the town, city, or even country that is absolutely the best for you is pretty low, right? There are a lot of places in the world that are not great places to be born in, to grow up in, and the idea that those people should, no matter what, just stay there and not seek to improve their lives or whatever is very silly. It's very silly. Many countries, including the United States of America, would not even exist in their current form if people had that attitude, right? It took people being adventurous and going off and breaking away from the norm to even found and create the country. If someone is born in the USA and they genuinely believe that that is the best place for them and their family or whatever, then it totally makes sense for them. For some of those people, there's plenty of Americans who moved to Mexico. There's plenty of Americans who moved to Canada, moved to the UK, moved to Europe, moved to the Middle East, whatever it may be. So I think it's important to frame that, first of all, because I think too many people have this very old school mentality in my mind of, you must stay in this place. I think that patriotism and loyalty should be more about to me, it's more about the people, really. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I think there's an interesting question as to when you talk about a country, what even is that, right? When you talk about the country, are you talking about the physical landmass? Are you talking about the government and the bureaucracy? Are you talking about the people in general, or the people who are close to you? When someone even says, oh, I like this country, or I think this about this country, what does that mean? If someone asks me, oh, Zuby, what are your thoughts on China? Like, well, what do you mean? Like, there's multiple ways to interpret that question. Do you mean, what are my thoughts on the CCP and the government and their policies? Do you mean the landmass? Yeah, the area itself and the natural beauty and maybe the architecture and nature and stuff like that. Do you mean the Chinese people? And which ones? Yeah. There's a billion people. Like, I don't really know. Yeah. It's a bit of a funny question to answer. But to come back to your original question, when I think about the things that I particularly care about and that are important to me, and that which I would want for my future family, my future children, and so on, and what environment and place would be best to raise them, when I consider all these things, the UAE is the one that has come out on top for me. I grew up in Saudi Arabia, so I don't have, for a lot of people, whether they're British or American or whatever, the idea of moving to somewhere like the UAE, moving to the Middle East, is like a very weird and foreign concept to them. I grew up in the Middle East, so it's not, in one way, it feels like a return home. Yeah, in a way. Personally, I like the weather. Not everybody likes hot weather. I do. I know people who, for example, there's people who are like, oh, Canada's a great place to live. Just the winter alone would make me not want to live in Canada, besides all the other stuff. Yeah. There's a few reasons I wouldn't want to live in Canada. If someone was like, oh, there's places where just the weather, I dislike the weather so much, I wouldn't want to live there. So for me, that is an important factor. Safety is an important factor. True safety, right? Especially when it would come to raising children. When I say safety, I'm talking about both physical safety. I'm also talking about ideological safety, right? The biggest complaints I hear from my friends, particularly in the UK and USA, who are parents, is the stuff they're pushing on kids in the school, through the media, on social media, all those things. I mean, I know people who are afraid to, who have worried, they worry so much about the physical safety of their children and so on. And that's always going to exist to some degree, but some places are much, much safer than other ones in the true sense, not this fake ideological safety, but in true safety. Obviously, there's financial reasons, right? When I look at taxes and I think of the next several decades and where I see my business and my career going, and simply by basing my company and residency in the UAE as opposed to, say, the UK, that could save me realistically in the long term over the course of my lifetime, probably 8 figures, right? 8 figures, which I would much rather go to people I care about and things I want to support than things some government bureaucrat decides that it should support, right? There are many things. I don't just oppose tax on the sort of, taxationist theft level, but I look at the way that they're spent and I look at the things that are being funded, and many of it are things that I don't support. I know how to use my money better than the government does and random politicians do, who I myself maybe didn't even vote for. So those are all factors. I also love the fact that the UAE and Dubai are on an upward trajectory. They're getting better. It's getting better each year, not getting worse. Again, big complaints I hear from friends in the UK as a whole, and particularly London, many parts of the USA, is that this place is worse than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's declining. I've been to many of these cities. I've spent time in San Francisco, LA, New York, and
LA's a shithole, to be honest.
Yeah, it's declining. It would be one thing if it were how it is and it were consistently getting better, it were on an upward trend, but it's still on a downward trend. And you don't want to be in a place that's on a downward trend. As an entrepreneur, there's lots of entrepreneurs here in Dubai and in other places. I also love the fact that it's a good travel hub. So as someone who travels around the world and does stuff in the East and in the West in different nations, I'd like to be somewhere where, oh, cool, I need to go to Miami. Boom, there's a direct flight. Oh, cool, I need to go to LA. There's a direct flight. I need to go to London. Direct flight. I need to go East. I need to go to Kuala Lumpur. I need to go to Thailand. Direct flights. So that's handy because I'm not someone who's ever going to just be in one place all the time. And then on top of this, I mean, I could go on. I also do like the fact that there's just no politics and culture war. Very little of it. It's really exhausting, and a lot of people don't realize this because they're in the water, right? A fish doesn't know when it's in the water. So again, if you are in USA particular, I love the USA. It's one of my favorite countries, right? And the big toss-up primarily for where to base myself was mainly between the USA and the UAE. One thing that can be really exhausting about the US, and it's not as bad as it seems in the media and social media, right? Most Americans are still normal and they're just living their lives and whatever. But the political and sociocultural climate is a lot hotter there. There is more polarization. There is more division. It does feel a bit more unpredictable, and people are at each other's throats because of left and right, or black versus white, or red versus blue, or whatever it is. There are still, those fault lines are very present, and they're constantly being exploited and widened by a lot of bad actors. And I feel that when I'm in the nation, I do feel a bit of a cloud over me where there's just that constant thing. And when it's hard to explain, but when I come somewhere like the UAE, it's just lifted. It switches off. Even if I go to the UK, it's greatly diminished, right? The UK political, social climate, it's not as aggressive, it's not as polarized. It exists, but it's not as aggressive as it is in the US with, the left versus the right and this, and everything it's just so politicized. It's like a team sport, and that's just very ingrained in many people. So I like that as well. I like the fact that when I'm here, I just don't even, if I think about it at all, it's thinking about stuff that's happening back over in those countries.
Yeah.
Right. I like the fact that, cool, I can just think of all the other things I need to focus on, my business, my health, my finances, my family, thinking about moves I want to make in the future. Again, our brains can only focus on so many things at once. So if I'm being all clouded by all of this other stuff, oh, this happened in the school board meeting and the GOP did this and the Democrats are doing this and we've got this election coming. Every election it's so exhausting.
You've been hijacked, haven't you?
Yeah, it's exhausting, and it never ends because there's just these 2-4-year election cycles. And, you can guarantee, this time next year, it's just going to be, remember how it was November 2016, November 2020, and they've got the midterms, like it's going to be, whether it's Trump or it's Biden or it's this guy or it's that, and the way they frame every election as the most important one of all time, and this is an existential threat, and this person is, if the other girl or guy wins, then this is the end of our republic, and this is the end of democracy, and this person's a threat to democracy, and this. It's just so jacked up. It really hijacks people's limbic system. And I don't think people realize when this is happening. I think when you're in the mix, it feels normal, and then when you come out of it, and you look over and you're like, geez, man, that's a lot. That's a lot of anger. That's a lot of frustration. That's a lot of hostility. That's a lot of fighting. And I can dip my toe in it. And as I said, when I can add something helpful to contribute, I'm happy to. I speak at a lot of U.S. political events. I spoke at the Michigan Republican Conference a couple months ago. I speak at, the National Conservative conferences. I've spoken at the big libertarian conferences and so on. So it's not even that, I totally shy away from this, but you don't want to be like, I don't think it's healthy to be completely just in that water nonstop, day in, day out. And you can tell when people are, because you can just be having a normal conversation and they just keep mentioning the left and the right. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm not even talking about politics. And you just say something, you're like, yeah, well, that's the left for you. Oh, well, those Republicans. I'm like, dude, I'm not even talking about politics. And it's just in their language. It's in their, it's at the top of the mind all the time. Everybody they meet, everybody they see, they're trying to work out, are they a Democrat? Are they a Republican? Are they this? And I'm like, yeah. I'm just like, man, that's not a healthy worldview. Or it's the same, like you have the people who are like the race obsessed people, and everything, they just view it through the lens of race. And they imagine that everyone else does the same thing. That's part of why you have these activists who think that everyone is racist, because they're obsessed. They themselves are so obsessed with race that they think everyone else is equally obsessed, right? They think that the average white person in the UK or the USA is walking around with this racial lens every day and deciding how to treat people based on their skin color. It's like, that is not the reality. Most people
try to pay the heating bill.
Yeah. I tell most people who like really fret over, racism and so on, because I know people who do. And I'm like, bro, people aren't even thinking about you. People are not thinking about you. Like, people are pretty selfishly minded. Most people are, as they walk about, they're thinking about things that pertain to themselves and their own lives. They're not looking at each person they walk past and doing some deep analysis of who they are and their ethnicity and this and this. Like, I'm sure those people do exist, but they're few and far between. And even if they do exist, if they're not bothering you, what's going on in their head shouldn't matter to you, right? If I walked past a man in the street in London and he were truly a racist person who didn't like black people, do you know what? As long as he doesn't mistreat me or say something nasty to me, I don't care what's in his head.
It's not your problem, is it?
It's not my problem. Like, I'm not here trying to thought police people. So it's like, someone might be like, oh, well, there's people who think like this. And I'm like, well, number one, you can't prove it, right? Unless they're out there like saying nasty stuff and doing nasty stuff, you can't prove it, right? You're psychologically mapping that onto someone else. And even if so, even if they do have horrible thoughts, or they do have some things that are not quite, as long as they're not acting on it and encouraging people to do bad stuff, who cares? This might be a controversial opinion, but I firmly believe people are entitled to their own bigotry, right? Keep it in your head. You see what I mean? Like, yeah. Keep it in your head, right? Someone might walk past and, oh, actually, they think a thought that's not a very good thought. But we all do this sometimes, right? When you're angry, or when something frustrates you or something, we've all had times where we think something that is not a good thought. It's a sinful thought. It's not something we should do or act on. And we don't. And it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, we might want to formulate our lives so that we think less of those thoughts. But again, this comes back to controlling yourself, right? Imagine me trying to take on the burden of thought policing all the 8 billion people in the world and making sure that they have the right ideas. Otherwise, social justice warriors are going crazy all the time because they want to do this to people, right? It's not even enough that you behave correctly. You must think the way they want you to think, right? So that's why they go around, they're calling everyone, this a racist, a bigot, a homophobe, a transphobe. But like they're just throwing all these labels on people, and they might not even be able to point out what they said that justifies those labels. They're just like, oh, well, he voted for Trump, therefore, or he voted for Brexit, so he's all these awful things. I'm like, well, can you prove to me that this guy's racist? Like, what did he do? And they're like, oh, well, he voted for Brexit. You're just like, I'm like, bro, that's your bad. Like, you need to work on yourself. Stop trying to work on other, like, you sort out your own thinking because you're not even making sense.
You're right in what you're saying in essence, because I've obviously lived in the UK and been to the US for some points, and it's like in these environments, they're highly tense environments. The US certainly a lot more than the UK, obviously. Highly tense environments where you're only one comment away from a potential argument about something that you don't even know the narrative of. Like, I don't even understand the left versus right in America and Democrats and Republicans and all this. Like, I don't want to know. All I want to know is that can I live in Miami for a decent amount of time, for a decent rent, and know somewhere that does clean food that's not cooked in seed oils, that's not this. The hardest thing I found with America, and was not only the tension there and how, like, the only nice place that I personally went was like kind of like the Miami, Florida area. That's kind of nicest state that I went to. And the hardest thing about that is that even though it's nice, even though it's beautiful, and even though the taxes are more favorable than other parts of the US, the hardest thing for me was the food's still shit. And if people are putting shit food in their body, then their mind's corrupted, and that's kind of what I was witnessing. When I went to LA, that place was like, it was like apocalypse now had happened there. Like, I don't know what I had in my mind of what I thought it would look like, but what I thought it would look like and what it looked like were not even in the same ballpark.
Which area were you in?
I went to Beverly Hills, nice on the outside and nice when you're up in the hills, but then as you come down the hill, it starts to get worse. I went to Hollywood, which was an absolute, which was like nothing you could ever imagine in the history of mankind. It was awful. And then I stayed in Venice. Now Venice is all right, but I imagine it was a hell of a lot better 10 years ago.
Exactly.
And I there's a massive homeless problem in the US, and I think it's we'd go off on a tangent talking about it, but I think it's a purposely made problem to create tensions and create political allegiances.
Yeah.
So I think you got all that to manage, which is why I was interested in why you chose the UAE. Obviously, like, I thought in my head, like, you've chose it because you just want to take yourself out of that. But my next question was like going to be along the lines of this: it's you've built up a massive following and a massive growth trajectory in the US by being in the vicinity to be able to allow yourself to interview like Elon Musk and things like that. Quick one for you guys. This podcast is sponsored by ContentRemoval.com. As many of you are probably aware, I set up ContentRemoval.com in 2017 to help people remove all forms of online content, and I've looked after some of the biggest names and brands in the world doing it, and I would love to help you if you're struggling. If you're struggling to remove images, videos, search results, fake accounts, or anything online, go to ContentRemoval.com and we'll help you today. Do you find that the only reason why you can potentially move now to the UAE and do this and still be successful is because you've already gone and put in the hard yards there already? So, like, for someone like me, what would you suggest that I went to America and based myself there to increase my trajectory? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What I think is, I don't think you need, like, for you're a single man, you don't have dependents yet, right?
Yeah.
You don't, unless there's some other type of rush or pressure, I don't think you need to absolutely base yourself in one place. There's nothing wrong with spending 3 months of the year in the US and 3 months in Australia and 3 months in Dubai and 3 months in, Germany, wherever makes sense for you. That's totally fine. So you can go over somewhere and you can spend time there, and you can do podcasts, you can do events, you can connect with people, you can hang out. You can even have a base there. You can also have one somewhere else. That's fine. Like, I have a US visa. I love going to the US. I spend tons of time in the US. It's one of my favorite countries to go to. The question was just simply, okay, when it comes to my resident status and my business operation and where it's incorporated and where I pay taxes and all this stuff, is that going to be the UK? Is it going to be the US? Is it going to be UAE? Which jurisdiction makes most sense for me, all things considered? And UAE blows the US out of the water for me in that regard.
100%.
Yeah, exactly. So when I just consider all these things, and again, I'm not thinking about what do other people want me to do, random strangers online.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, what would be best for me? If I were to raise children in one of these countries or another one, where would I feel most comfortable doing so? Where do I think would be a place where I'm not constantly fighting against the culture, or I'm constantly having to worry about this or worry about that thing? Look, there's always going to be concerns. There's always going to be worries, but you can minimize that, right? If you were raising your family in Hollywood and Los Angeles, and you're trying to keep your children safe and your wife safe, and you're trying to put them in good schools, and you're trying to not overpay taxes, and you're trying to not overpay rent and mortgages and all the
there's ways.
Well, I'm saying it's an uphill battle.
It's a hard way.
It can be done, but why not be somewhere where it's easier? Yeah. I imagine I'm the youngest of 5 kids. I'm an uncle to 10. All of my siblings are married. All of my siblings have children. I've seen the dynamics of family. Lots of my friends are married. As I understand it, marriage and parenthood are beautiful things, and I'm excited for them at this point in my life. They're also challenging. They're also difficult. So why I don't want to make that even harder than I need to, right? If I can go to, it sounds trite, if I can go to a gym, which is really good, which is 2 minutes away, or I can go to one which is 30 minutes away, and I have both options, I'm going to go to the one that's easier for me, right? Like, training is already hard. Why do I need to add the extra commute to it, right? If I'm traveling around, cool, I can go to that one too. So that's simply the way that I view it for myself. And not everyone is going to reach the same conclusion, nor would I want them to, right? I don't want everyone living in the same city or in the same country. That would be a nightmare. I just say to people, look, each person has to make their own decision. And there's going to always be trade-offs. There's no place there's not trade-offs. One of the most common questions I get asked, Frankie, because people see I travel so much, is what's the best city? What's the best country? Where should I move to? I'm like, bro, I don't know who you are. I don't know your job. I don't know your family situation. I don't know what type of weather you like. I don't know what type of food you like. I don't know how much you care about taxes and social things. Like, do you want socialized? There's people who think the NHS is amazing. There's people who think socialized medicine is a disaster. There's people who are happy to pay. I've spoken to people who are from like places like Finland and Norway, and they're happy to pay 40, 50, sometimes 60% taxes for the things that they get for it. Whereas to me, I don't even care what you're giving me. I don't want to pay. I'm not giving half my money to the government. I don't even care. I don't care what you give me. Yeah. Like, to me, on a moral principle and just the way I view the world,
it's not good for you.
Yeah, like that's not it. But everyone's different. So I'm just like, look, some people will be like, hey, the best place for me is Iceland. And I'm like, cool.
I've got some conflicting views in my mind that I'd like to discuss with you, because obviously you're a man that's done this.
Sure.
When we spoke in Australia, you were at that point in your life, you were traveling around the world, and you had a certain amount of pairs of shoes, certain amount of shirts. We talked about the suit that you had one suit and it could do this, that, and that way, and we talked about that whole process. And I thought, oh, that inspired me to go on this journey myself. Now I'm living this life where I'm out of this suitcase. And I'm kind of spending like 1 or 2 months in each location. I can't do weeks here, weeks there, because I get the instability kills me. But one thing I've struggled with is like when I let go of my UK base after leaving Australia, I kind of feel like by having no fixed base, it's been a real struggle to me. And I think it's how have you overcame that struggle when you leave? Because obviously you did it for so much longer than me.
Yeah.
So how did you get over that bit?
Well, look, firstly, again, it comes down to, there's a lot of factors, I think. One of them is just personality type, right? When I explain to people what I do, I'm like, yeah, I don't recommend it for most people, right? I could do 50 flights a year, something like that. There's some people who hear that and they're like, oh, that's awesome. I'm so jealous. I wish I could do that. I'm like, do you really? Like, some people are wired for it, but a lot of people aren't. Like, I don't even get jet lag. Yeah. Right? Most people are like, geez, how do you deal with jet lag? I'm like, I don't. Like, I'm fine, right? So maybe there's something in my physiology and personality type that makes me okay with it. But also, the way I grew up was really different from most people. I grew up traveling, right? I was born in England. I lived in Saudi Arabia. I went to boarding school from the age of 11. From the age of 11, I was flying internationally by myself. Yeah, flying back and forth between the UK and Saudi Arabia multiple times a year on my own. I've now at this point been to, I think, 43 different countries. I've been to so many cities. I've been to 25 different U.S. states. I'm not even American. When I went solo with my music career and I was just traveling all over the UK, Bournemouth, Manchester, Isle of Wight, Norwich, Cardiff, Glasgow, just all over the place. I've lived this very nomadic lifestyle to some extent for the majority of my life.
So it kind of feels strange, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So when people even ask me, like, where are you from? Most people, if you ask them where are they from, they have a simple answer. I don't. I'm not trying to be smart or whatever or be weird and not be indirect with people. But if someone asks me, oh, where are you from? I'm like, well, what do you mean? Do you mean where I was born? I was born in Luton. I've never lived in Luton in my life, right? I'm from England. They're like, why do you sound American? I'm like, okay, I grew up in Saudi Arabia. I went to an American school in Saudi Arabia, and then I went to a British school and a British university, and my family is from Nigeria. And right. So I could say Nigeria is my home. I have a valid claim to that. I could say Saudi Arabia is my home. I have a valid claim to that. I could say England is my home. I have a claim to that. And I say that, and people are like, oh, but you sound American.
So essentially what you're saying is you've become peaceful wherever you lay your hat.
Exactly.
And whereas what I've been trying to battle is in my head, I've been trying to battle like, oh, you're a citizen of Australia, you're a citizen of the UK. And it's like, I've attached myself to those things. Whereas what you've plainly said to me there is, Frankie, I don't associate with a certain country. I just associate my home is wherever I lay my hat.
Yes. Well, I wouldn't even say that. I would say I associate with several of these countries. But I don't have such a strong, like when I talk to other people, I can see that a lot of people, maybe most people, have a very strong emotional attachment to a place. It could be a city. It could be their country as a whole. I think that is the norm. I think the global norm is to have a strong emotional attachment to where you're from and where you were raised. I'm an anomaly in that I don't really have that. I love the UK. I love Saudi. I love the US. I love Nigeria. And I appreciate different things in different ones. I love other countries that I've never lived in just because I enjoy traveling to them. But for me, that particular hurdle is it's a very small bump because I don't feel such a strong attach. I like the UK, but I don't have the emotional attached to it in the way that someone who was born in England, raised in England, grew up in England, went to school, went to university, whatever. So for me as well, and I think part of I've never actually discussed this before, but I would assume that some of the reason that bonding occurs is because people associate the hometown or the home country with the people, right? Oh, that's where my family is. That's where my parents are. Maybe their siblings, their school friends, their university friends, whatever it is. A lot of people spend the first 20 plus years of their life in one city or one region, and everyone they know is there. I grew up traveling. I have friends my friends are all over the world. I can go to any city, any country. I have friends there. Some of them will be friends that I grew up with from Saudi, because where I grew was like very multinationality. So there were Americans and Canadians and Brits, people from Arab countries, people from Asian countries, people from African countries. They were all there. And now all those people are dispersed all over the world. I went to 2 different boarding schools in the UK. So I have sets of friends from, okay, so let me run this through. I have sets of friends from the first school I went to in Saudi Arabia, the second school I went to in Saudi Arabia, the first boarding school I went to in the UK, the second boarding school I went to in the UK, Oxford University, friends I made when I worked in the corporate world for 3 years, friends I've made through my music career, and then friends I've made from all of the crazy work that I've done over the past few years, podcasts, speaking events, just posting on social media, whatever it is. So my circle of, I have like 10 circles of friends all over the place. They're not just like, oh, okay, my friends are in Bournemouth, or, oh, okay, my friends are in Dubai, or my friends are in, like, they're just everywhere. So I don't have that. I think maybe that's part of why as well. I don't have like that emotional connection. So I love Saudi. I lived in Saudi for 20 years. But everyone I grew up with in Saudi no longer lives there. So if I were to go visit Saudi Arabia, I can't just kind of go back to where I grew up and see all those same people and catch up with everyone, because none of them are there anymore. So while there's some desire to see the place again, those connections are scattered elsewhere.
Yeah.
I don't really have a loyalty to any patch of land. I do have loyalty to people. I have loyalty, of course, to my friends, to my family. I'm super tight with my family. And also with my own family, we're scattered across 4 different countries and continents in my immediate family, right? I've got 4 siblings. We live in 4 different countries. So even if I want to see everyone, I want to see my brothers, my sisters, my nieces, my nephews.
It involves you traveling, which is what you do.
Exactly. Because people are like, oh, don't you miss your family? I'm like, yeah, I see my family more than anyone else in my family sees my family.
Because of the way
I'm traveling so much. Exactly. And I understand, look, once I settle down and I get married and I have children and start my own family, some of this is I'll still be traveling because I need to for what I do for work, but it's not going to be as intense as it has been. And I'm very conscious of that. I'm very aware of it. I recognize, cool, I'm in this unique stage. So
seasons.
Seize it. I'm working on my 3rd book right now. And earlier in the year, I went to Guadalajara in Mexico to work on it. I went to Medellin, Colombia last month to work on my book. I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to go to Medellin. I've always wanted to go to Colombia. Why don't I work on my book there? And once I've got like some kids and stuff, I might not be won't be able to make that decision so easily. Or if I do, it's going to be a big, okay, let's all go over. Like there's a lot more coordination. So something I also recommend to young people is, if you're in a certain position where I think it's good to look down the course of your life and think about what you will be able to do and not do, and how easy or difficult it might be to do at different phases of your life.
Yeah.
Right. I think about my life a lot. Like I don't run around doing all the things I'm doing thinking, okay, I can live exactly like this forever. I know I can't. And actually I wouldn't want to. If I had dependents and kids who need to see their father and be around, I wouldn't want to be just, okay, bye guys. Like I'm off for months on end traveling in random places. It'll be, okay, cool. I've got to go do this event here. Either I'd like to think, okay, sometimes they can come with me. Sometimes it might just be me who goes. And then, okay, cool. I do the thing and I come back. So I think a lot down the line, and I like to sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, life plan a little bit and think, okay, this is what I aspire to. This is what I'm going to have in the future. So let me use this moment to build everything towards that. And I'll be honest with you, Frankie, at this stage, the knowledge and the desire to become a family man myself and to open that whole new chapter of my life is my biggest motivator at this stage. So many of the moves I'm making, you heard this in my answer, why the UAE? I'm not just thinking about me. I'm thinking about people who don't even exist yet.
Yeah,
right.
Powerful. That.
So that's all factoring into the equation. The things I'm doing, the way I'm even trying to set up my business. So one of my first goals. So I went. So not everyone knows. I worked in the corporate world from 2008 to 2011. October 2011, I left that and I became a full-time rapper. And I was just traveling all over the UK. I was doing gigs. I was selling my CDs on the street and eventually in shopping centers, etc. And one of my first goal when I did that was, okay, my first goal was break even, make enough money to keep this thing going and to keep myself alive, basically feed myself and be able to handle my basics. That was like my first goal. And after I hit that, one of my next goals, and this took a long time, this took about almost a decade. One of my next big goals was I want to be location independent. I want to be at a stage where I don't need to be in one city, let alone country, in order to
be successful.
Yeah, in order to keep making money, right? If you think of lots of jobs most people work, right, you're tied to a place. And that might be okay for some people. Like I said, most people are more homebody types, right? That's totally fine. But I don't want to be like, okay, to make money, I need to be in London or I need to be in this one place. So one of my big goals was, okay, there's this thing called the internet and this opens up a whole bunch of opportunities. How can I use this to enable this goal? And over the course of time, I was able to work out, oh, cool. I was able to get to a stage where, wow, okay, my income now is besides live events, besides public speaking and concerts, my income is location independent. I could be in Dubai, I could be in Miami, I could be in Colombia, I could be wherever in the world, and I could keep making money. So that was one of my big goals. I've achieved that one. One of my next big goals was, have some level of security with all that. And now my goal at this point is, okay, I want to, ideally, Lord willing, I want to have as many kids as the good Lord gives me. I want to get married. I want to have a lot of kids. That's expensive, right?
I need to save tax.
Yeah, that's expensive. And yeah, there's more considerations beyond the financial, but as a man, I have to take a financial responsibility. So what are the moves that I can make, and what are the things that I can do that put me in that best position? This comes back to how we actually started the podcast. And I was saying, I recommend to people, like, take care of yourself, put yourself in a good place, make yourself and your family as prepared to weather any storm as you can. And so that's very much where my brain is going. I'm not, even when it comes to entrepreneurship or business or whatever, my goal isn't, let me make money so that I can buy a flashy new car or like a fleet of cars or some material thing. I'm thinking, look, I'm going to get married. I'm going to start a family. And as I've already said, that's going to be challenging. What's one of the biggest challenges that families have? Financial. I'm like, I don't want that to be a massive burden in my marriage, in my family, and so on, right? Like, I don't need to be obscenely bawling, but I don't want it to be where I'm making compromises I don't want to make, or I'm doing lots of things I don't want to do, or I'm compromising because I need the money, or because I haven't got the money to do something. I don't know, my child gets sick and I can't afford to. I don't want to. I've seen what other people deal with, and there are certain problems where I would like to try to avoid those potential pitfalls. So that's very much the way I think. I just have an abundance mindset, and it's better to have abundance than to have scarcity, not just financially, but in various things. I think this even comes down to something like health. People, what are you training for? I'm training for life, right? I hope I never, right? You know what I mean? Like, I hope
you are too, mate.
Yeah, like, I'm not planning some crazy emergency or something. I'll tell you, do you know one group of people who I used to think were a little bit crazy, but I get them now?
CrossFitters.
No, preppers. Preppers. You know, the people who have like a year's worth of supply, worth of food in their basement, and like toilet paper and toothpaste, right? They're ready for
they're ready for apocalypse.
Yeah, they're ready. Like, I used to be like, what are these people doing? Like, why are they so like? And yeah, it can go too far. But I'm like, you know what? I get that, well, right? Be prepared. You don't know what's going to happen, right? The electricity grid could go out. There could be a shortage of fuel. There could be all sorts of things. A hurricane could come and knock out the power or whatever. I'm like, you know what? Actually, it's probably a good idea to have a few months worth of supplies for yourself and your family. That's pretty smart.
If you look at how families were in the UK or America years gone by, even Australia as well, if you look at how families were, they did stockpile on things. When things were cheaper and when things were abundant, they stocked up on those things, whether it be apples and they put them into storage, whether it be potatoes or whatever they're doing. And we're taught as a to be consumers, and we're taught that there's going to be an app that you can go and buy this on at any time of the year, and at one point in our lives, there may be a point when that's not possible.
Yes, exactly.
And you got to respect these people that kind of they're doing the same with food and with what they like in their life, the same way that you're teaching people to do with money, so that they can survive a bad time.
Yeah, it's contingency.
It's contingency plan, and having a contingency plan isn't something that we should scoff at these days, because it's the people that put the planning into their life. They've got a clear goal, haven't they?
Yes.
These people have a clear purpose and clear goal. Their clear goal is we want to be able to survive through anything. So we're going to put ourselves in the position to survive through anything. So the question you have to ask in your life is, what things will I need to survive through that I haven't prepared myself for?
Yeah.
And so that goes for your fitness. It goes for your health. It goes for everything in your life. You've talked at length there of why you've prepared yourself financially over these years. It's because you want to be able to have a family.
Yes.
And you don't want to be thinking about money when you're trying to bring children into the world and trying to bring them up. You want to be thinking about abundance because you've already laid the groundwork to it.
Exactly.
And I think once people get clear on that, I think that's when you can, fully cement your legacy. But through your journey in America, obviously you're not there at the moment, but you've interviewed phenomenal people. One of the key people that you've interviewed and that I want people to go watch on Twitter or X now is your interview with Elon Musk. I just want to kind of pull out the things that you learn from Elon that you never even conceptualized that you could learn from this man. Like, give me some insights that you've seen from being with this man that I perhaps have missed from looking at him from the outside.
Yeah. I think most of the things I learned from him are not explicitly things that he said. It was more from the interaction and the experience. I think the first one is, it's more like confirmation of things I already knew, but he helped to amplify them. One of those things is humility and kindness. I'm big on humility and kindness. I do my best to exemplify these things with anybody I meet. But it really hit me that no matter how successful you become or how famous you become or how much wealth you have, I'm sitting here with probably the richest man in the entire world, right? The founder, the CEO of SpaceX, SpaceX, Tesla,
PayPal,
Twitter, formerly PayPal, the Boring Company, right? If someone had a right to be arrogant, Elon Musk would be up there, right? As someone who would have a right, shall we say, to be a bit cocky, a bit full of themselves, look down on other people. But he's not. He's not. He's humble. He's humble. He's kind. He's friendly. Very down to earth. Nice. The fact that he even gave 2 hours. How much is 2 hours of Elon's time worth? To sit down.
You can't put a price on it.
To sit down with me on my podcast. I don't have the biggest podcast in the world. It wasn't like, oh, okay, this is the Joe Rogan experience. I just asked him to be on my podcast on DM. Do you know what he wrote back? Sure. That was it. People are like, oh, how did you get him? I was like, well, I asked him. And so for him to just be so kind to me and the people who were helping to set up the filming and so on, just be generous with his time and just be a normal human being. It was just a reminder that no one is too good for, being humble and treating people kindly and just being decent. I think we have this idea, whether it's politicians or it's actors or it's athletes or it's rappers or certain celebrities, they get very on their high horse. They get full of themselves. They start to look down on other people, view other people as peasants and whatever. And it's like, that's a choice. That's not something that's inevitable. So no matter what level of success I reach or anyone else reaches, there's not a good reason to be an a-hole or to look down on other people or to not be kind and generous with your time and gratitude and so on. So that really hit me. Beyond that as well is I already think big. I think bigger than most people. And when I tell people some of the things I want to achieve, at this point, people don't think I'm so delusional because I've got a decent track record of doing the things I say I will. There's things I said I'd do 10 years ago, and I look at my life now and I'm like, hey, I did it. I rapped about that in 2013, and now I did the thing, right? But it made me realize, like, he made me feel like I think small, right? He wants humanity to be an interplanetary species. He's launching rockets into space every week with a goal that in a decade or two from now, we can be on Mars and we can be getting resources from other planets and potentially setting up civilization. Like, whoa, like my thoughts are based on Earth. I think about Earth. I'm like, yo, let's sort out Earth. He's already trying to put us on different planets. So as big as I think, I'm like, wow, I'm still thinking small. Like there's levels to this. Like there's no ceiling. There's no ceiling, right? Human beings can do extraordinary things. This is a guy who was born in Pretoria in South Africa, had a difficult childhood, went through these things, set up this, made this company, had this success, did this. He's still in his 50s. He's not even, some 80-year-old man. And you're seeing him just doing all these things and having successes with them. You're seeing what he's done now with Twitter/X over the past year and how he's righting that ship. And I'm just like, man, and he's doing this. And then he's got what, 9 kids?
He doesn't mess about.
Yeah, he's got 9 kids. He's running multiple companies. He's doing all of these things, and he's doing it all while maintaining a sense of humor, while still having fun, while still posting memes, while still engaging with normal people and going out to events and doing all this. So for me, that's just a great model and inspiration of you can truly, I already know it, but you can truly do extraordinary things. One person can, for better or worse, do truly extraordinary things. We can look through history, look at different countries, and you can see single individuals who have, for better or worse, massively impacted humanity. So I think those are some of the core things I just learned from that couple hours I spent with him and speaking with him and seeing his demeanor and just seeing what he was like as a real human being. Because as you know, I guess with any famous person or someone who has achieved so much, there's always a temptation as to view them as not really human, right? And I think that's one of the things that can cause certain celebrities or public figures to go a bit off the rails, because you can get to a point where no one treats you like a human being, right? Either they treat you like some type of god and they're like crying and fainting and being all weird, like you walk past them and people are taking, or they're like taking photos of you.
Put yourself in fan mode.
Yeah, like they're just not treating you. Maybe if you don't have the right circle, you're just surrounded by yes men and you're surrounded by people who just, they're sucking up to you all the time, agreeing with everything you say. They're never telling you you're wrong. And I think that's when people become very prideful and very arrogant, and they're just so detached from reality or whatever. You can get the both ends, people just totally sucking up to you, or you get the flip side where people are just like incredibly nasty and hostile and derogatory towards you because they think that you've got a certain amount of money or celebrity, so you don't have feelings anymore, right? I can use this person as my personal punching bag, especially online, because they're not really a person. You see that too, right? People can be like incredibly nasty and harsh towards people. And sometimes they'll get called out on it and they're like, yeah, who cares? They're a millionaire anyway. And I'm like, all right, so you think someone being a millionaire means that they're no longer affected by really harsh comments and insults and undue nastiness? Like, this is not someone who, in most cases, this is someone who's a stranger. They don't know who you are. They've never wronged you. They've never insulted you. They've never done something, but you're coming at them and you're saying these extremely nasty things, sometimes getting very, very personal, maybe even talking about their family or whatever it is. The person hasn't done anything to you. Maybe you don't like their music. Yeah. Maybe you don't like, you see what I mean? I'm very careful with these things. So, for example, I'm very careful with how I talk about other people, because I've been on both sides of this equation, and I see some of the things that people say about me or say about other people who are in the spotlight to some degree or who have big followings or whatever it may be. And I'm very careful with how I even say things, right? So when someone is like, and I've called people out on this and corrected them even in the real world, right? Someone might be, oh, I hate Justin Bieber. And I'm like, oh, when did you meet him? Right? When did you meet him? Like, what did he do to you? Right? When you say you hate, you think of it, you saying you hate. It's
a strong word.
It's a very strong word. And they're like, oh, it's like, okay. It was like, okay, you mean you don't like his music? Right? Is that warranted to say that you hate the person as an individual? Because again, I'm not trying to word police people, but it's like, think of what you're really saying, right? He doesn't even know you exist. He doesn't know who you are. He's never wronged you. He's never said anything to you. He's never done anything. For you to have that, like, such a strong thing. I mean, maybe if someone's, I don't know, some politician who has run a genocide and slaughtered people or something, and you're like, oh, I hate that person. Okay, I get that more. But if it's just someone who you don't like the work that they produce, or you disagree with them on some things that they've said, or whatever it is, because I've had people saying this, and it's weird to me. I remember when the first time I experienced it was actually in my late teens when I was starting out in music. And to begin with, because it was so new to me, it affected me a little. I remember the first time ever, this is when I was 19. I remember the first time ever I was on like an internet forum, and there was a whole topic about me, right? Forum topics, and the topic was about me. And I'm there reading through the comments. I don't know who anyone is, right? I'm just a student at university who's starting making music, and some people are critiquing my music, some people like it, some people don't, whatever. And I was fascinated by how personal some people were getting, right? There was someone there talking about how they hate Zuby and how I'm this and how I'm that. And I'm like, whoa, like, why is this person, like, what have I done to this person? It was really personal. And I was like, this person, you don't know anything about me. I don't even know who you are, right? It's just a username. And they're saying all these things, and there's those back and forth. And that was my first time, this is like pre-Twitter, this is pre all these things. And I was just like, man, this is weird. Like, why do people get so personal? And then I realized, man, people do that all the time. People are always saying, oh, I love this person, or I hate this person, or having all these strong feelings. And these are all strangers, right? Just because someone is in a spotlight, it doesn't mean that you actually know them. And I've also learned, I have met quite a lot of famous people at this point. And the way that some people perceive them or talk about them is often very different to how they are. I've met Ben Shapiro. I've met Elon Musk. I've met Tucker Carlson. I've met Andrew Tate. I've met Joe Rogan. I met Candace Owens. Some of these people who are, they're loved and hated depending on
what side of the coin you're on.
Yeah, depending on what side of the coin. But I'm like, these are all decent, good human beings. These are people who are polite, who are friendly, who, even if you disagreed with them, if you met them in the real world, they wouldn't be nasty to you. They wouldn't be insulting. They wouldn't be harsh. They'd shake your hand. They'd talk to you. They'd give you the time of day. So I'm very conscious of that, even especially with, people who are out there who I disagree with, or maybe I think they might have bad ideas or whatever. I'm very careful to not get into the, dehumanizing or say, oh, I hate that person or whatever. I can criticize their ideas. And by the way, this is the last point here. One of my core online principles and real world principles is play the ball, not the man, right? So you will never go on my Twitter feed or my Instagram feed or anything else and see me insulting and attacking any individual. I don't do it.
So what you do is you will break down the idea that they've put in front of you.
Exactly.
But you're not going, hey, Dave, you're an arsehole.
Nope. Exactly. And I see this all the time. Most people don't have this principle. Most people they'll just go at people. They'll call people out. They'll try to drag them. They'll try to dogpile them, right? Instead of saying, hey, here's why I disagree with this idea, they'll just attack the person. They'll go personal. They'll start insulting, all of that. I refuse to do that. And I'm not trying to virtue signal. I think all these conversations and debates and so on would be better if people dealt with the ideas. And it can be hard because sometimes both individually and for other people, we connect ourselves to our ideas. So if someone criticizes one of my ideas,
you think you're being attacked?
Yeah, I can have a maybe just a human tendency to think, oh, they're attacking me. And I think you have to detach those things, both for yourself and for other people, because ideas are external to us. So someone can criticize an idea that I have. It could be something very, very core to my belief system, right? I'm a Christian. There could be someone who is critical of Christianity. They're of another faith, or they're an atheist, and they think that this belief system is absurd or whatever. I can see that. I can hear those arguments. I can hear those criticisms. I don't take it personally. Right? If you start telling me that, oh, you're an idiot or you're a bad person or whatever because you I'm like, wait, man, chill. Like, can we let's separate? Let's discuss.
Let's separate my idea and your idea from actually me as a person, because you've not actually got a problem with me. You got a problem with my idea on this, and your idea on this don't match.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's fine to have two different ideas, mate, without us having to agree in the middle on exactly the outcome of the idea, without you needing to tell me that I'm an arsehole for it. I think there's a great discernment with that, and I think a lot of what this podcast has been overarching about is all about, you have personal power, and it's your responsibility to take ownership of your personal power and direct it in a way that will benefit you and your standing in life and your family's standing in life. You've got to direct your power, your own internal compass, and you've only got so many hours in the day and only so many topics that you as a human being can conceptualize at one point. And the only reason you are well versed and have expanded into so many topics over your lifetime is because you've added them over time. You didn't just everything that you talk about now and everything you encapsulate now. I couldn't go and tackle all that tomorrow because I've not lived the life that you've lived to be able to articulate your ideas. Do you understand? And this is where a lot of people go wrong. They're trying to articulate ideas that they haven't lived. You've gone out to the world, you've lived all these ideas, and now you're bringing them all and you're iterating, predicated on what you actually want to achieve as well. So I just really want people to get what you've said today is just own your own stuff. Check your house today.
Yes.
Is it in order? If it isn't, don't go on the internet and write about someone else's house. Get your own house in order. Get your own energy right. See where you can improve your own life. And like Zuby says, start with your fitness. I think there's such a common thread throughout this and everything you're saying. I just really want to nail that home so people got it, because I don't want it to be lost in translation, because everything you've said to me says, you see this house that you have, this vessel that you're in, it's your vessel. Get it right and you can nail everything in life. But if you get it wrong, you're now going out there fighting all these battles in life that have no correlation to even the direction that you want to drive.
Fighting yourself.
Yeah, fighting yourself. And it's just one of this.
And I think there's maybe one more point to be made here. There's lots of points I could make, but I don't want to be too drawn out. I think people need to really think about what loving yourself means. I think we live in this age where there's a lot of therapy language and there's a lot of talk about, self-love and this and that. I think that true self-love means true self-responsibility and accountability and wanting to be the best version of yourself. Not this lazy, self-love as in the whole world must just conform to you and take you as you are. I think if you truly love yourself, you should want to be. If you truly love yourself, you want to be in good physical shape. That's true body positivity. Body positivity isn't I gain 300 pounds and I'm waddling around and I'm telling everyone that they should accept me as I am and love me as I am and that I'm big and beautiful. That's complete nonsense. If I love myself and I love my body, I want to take care of that vessel. If I love myself, I want to treat myself kindly. I want to push myself, but not be harsh to myself, but I want to push myself and realize my own potential. And I want to naturally then help other people realize their own. And I think it's I think it's important for people to realize as well that both positive and negative, these things are really, they're spirals. If you take a break from all the negativity and you start to get your fitness and your diet right and you start to do these things, you'll feel better. You'll feel more confident. You'll actually start to treat people more kindly.
You'll be more chilled out.
You'll be more chilled out. You'll start to make better connections, and with that comes new opportunities. And it's a positive feedback loop. It's a positive feedback loop. Whereas if you do the opposite and you have this nasty mentality and you think that people are generally more bad than they are good and that people are out to get you and that you're a victim or whatever, you're going to reflect that in everything and you go down in a negative spiral, because confirmation bias works in both directions. You frame your mind in the former way and you start to notice all of these positive things and you start to see all the opportunities that are out there, and you start to generate ideas and think of all the cool things you can do and people you can meet. Whereas if you adopt the negative frame, you're going to see all the things that confirm that, right? And you'll get more and more, you'll get pulled deeper into the abyss. And the further down you go, the easier it is to sort of sink even further. So, because you can tell this, because sometimes someone is down there and you're trying to help them out, and they're really adamant on staying down there, right? They get resentful at you because you're actually trying to help them. And that's one of the most difficult things. And I think it's up to individuals to at least take those first couple steps to improving themselves and just being open and more optimistic and positive towards the world and other people. I don't mean this in any sort of like woo way. I mean this in a very real way, just in terms of how human beings operate. Human beings are very reciprocal. If someone is going out there and they have a bad attitude and they're nasty to you and they're being mean to other people and whatever, you don't want to associate yourself with them. You don't want to be friends with them. You don't want to help them out. You don't want to whatever. Whereas you see someone else and they're being kind and polite and civil and they're treating you nicely and talking to other people, what you're like, you know what, like, yeah, let me connect with that guy or gal. Let's see how we can help each other out. Let's have that conversation. And this is where opportunities come from. And I've very much lived this throughout the last few decades of my life.
Yeah, and that is the true art of manifestation, where and I know that's a woo-woo term to a lot of people, but it's essentially the your good actions that you're doing in the world are paying you back in real time and sub-real time in the future, because of, you're constantly depositing good things.
It's real.
And it's a real thing. You don't see anyone in life that has, obviously they have challenging moments, but that you don't see anyone that does bad all the time that is constantly depositing good in the world.
No,
it's impossible. It's
not a long-term strategy.
It doesn't happen. If there was one golden piece of advice that Zuby could drop on this audience right now, just one golden piece, you've left them with things that are going to challenge their mind in ways that I know are going to be really powerful. But if there's just something you could just leave that's going to move someone 1% further forward today from the moment you drop it on this mic, what would it be?
Did you ask me that question last time we did a podcast?
I did.
What did I say? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
I don't want to repeat myself.
I want to say I remember, but I don't remember exactly what you said. But I know whatever message. Here's what I know. I know whatever message you're about to deliver will be the right message for today.
Okay. I'm going to say something that I know for sure I didn't say last time. I will say, truly, I'm going to quote Jesus Christ, truly love your neighbor as you love yourself. And there's two parts of that. One of those is love yourself. A lot of people don't love themselves, right? Love yourself and do your best to create and be the best version of yourself. Day to day, moment to moment, we all make thousands of choices every day, and we can choose the good one or we can choose the bad one. Love yourself, and then extend that to other people. Extend that to other people. I think that's how we truly change the world. I don't think it's just through activism. It's certainly not through voting, electing more politicians and bureaucrats, or fighting online, or putting in the right hashtag or flag in your bio, right? None of that does anything. If we really want to move the needle, then love your neighbor as you love yourself. Treat yourself kindly, treat other people kindly, be decent, be civil. Don't buy into this notion that success comes from, stepping on other people or being an a-hole or being a jerk or whatever meme someone wants to put out there. The vast majority of people who are successful in various regards are people who are genuinely kind and who dedicate their lives to helping other people with their skills, their talents, their products, their services, and so on. I think that's the real key to meaning, purpose, let me not say happiness. Let me say joy.
I love that. And I think it's so succinct what you said, because it sounds so basic, but it's so fundamentally true to every part that you've said, and it encapsulates everything you've said throughout this conversation. I just want to take this personal note to say to you, since I met you in Australia and seeing what you've gone on to achieve with your own podcast, with your own life, with speaking, is nothing short of inspiring to me. Awesome. As someone who's on the pursuit of trying to be the best version of myself. I'm not trying to be Zuby. I'm not trying to be Steve Jobs. I'm not trying to be Elon Musk. I'm trying to be the best version of Frankie. But looking at someone like you that does it, but doesn't grey the area between trying to make it a funnel, is very inspiring to me, mate. And I just want to say that I'm proud of you as a friend, and I've loved to see it, every moment of it. So thank you so much for your time, brother. And guys, I hope that adds a lot of value to your life. I hope that's moved you forward in areas you couldn't even conceptualize. And as always, like, subscribe, share it with all your friends. And I appreciate every single one of you that supported me along this journey. I'm probably about 170 odd reps in by now, and I've loved every single moment of it. So much love. Guys, do me a solid favor. Drop a comment below this video and let us know who you want on the podcast next.